Hotel. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Matthew Daniels TV. And today we are going to be doing what we always do, family. We are going to be allowing the ancestors to speak. But today we're going to be letting the ancestors speak on a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about the secrets of fortune telling and prophecy. Five Negroes who could see the future. So we're going to be talking about fortune telling. We're going to be talking about prophecy. We're going to be talking about predictions. And we're going to be showing you guys some prophecies and predictions that actually came true. So if you give me just a second, I know it's early. Thank you for tapping in. Thank you for watching. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching. So as I get the PowerPoint presentation set up, as I make sure that my audio is good, I want you guys to hit that like button when you come in. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave me some type of comment. Let me know where you guys are watching from. So give me just a second. I'm going to be checking my audio. Okay, audio good. Now let me get this PowerPoint presentation up, and we're going to get right off into the information. This one, family, this one is going to be really good. From the beginning of time, right? From the beginning of time, people have been talking about, peering beyond the veil, looking into the future, seeing what is going to happen and questioning if they could affect what happens. And in all religions and spiritual systems, dating back thousands and thousands of years, you've always had the oracle, the seer, the fortune teller, the prophet, the individual that could tell you what was going to happen in the future. And they did this using various means. From watching movies, we're all familiar with someone looking into a crystal ball or someone filling a cauldron full of water and looking into the water to be able to determine the outcome of a situation. There are some cultures where the oracle or the prophet or the seer, the fortune teller, they would ritualistically sacrifice an animal, open the animal up, and they would view the entrails of the animal and try to glean what was going to happen. A lot of times you had kings. They would employ prophets and fortune tellers and seers in order to tell them if a course of action was the right course of action to take or not. They would, if they were going to go to war, they would want to know if the gods were in their favor. We see this in African culture. We see this in ancient Roman culture. We see this in ancient Greek culture. We see this with the ancient Babylonians. We see it with the ancient Israelites. We see it with the ancient Egyptians. We see it with the Chinese. We see it with the Hindus. We see it all over the world. And so the question would be, since we're talking about the ancestors and since we're talking about hoodoo, were there any hoodoo prophets? Were there any individuals practicing hoodoo that could claim to see the future? Were there any fortune tellers of the hoodoo faith, of the hoodoo spiritual tradition? And I want to tell you that, yes, hoodoo is no different. And so what I'm going to do with this video, I'm going to show you 5 different instances of our ancestors who claimed that they could see the future. And I'm going to show you evidence of their predictions coming true. Okay, I'm going to show you the individuals predicting the future, and I'm going to show you evidence of their predictions coming true. And we're going to be talking about 5 different individuals. So this is going to be really good, family. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do, getting into the presentation so that we're all on the same page, right? We're going to just look at a definition of what fortune telling is. Now, we all know what it is, but let's just look to the Encyclopedia Britannica and let's look at the definition of it. And then let's get into the meat of this presentation. So according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, fortune telling is the forecasting of future events or the delineation of character by methods not ordinarily considered to have a rational basis. Evidence indicates that forms of fortune telling were practiced in ancient China, Egypt, Chaldea, and Babylonia as long ago as 4000 BCE. Prophetic dreams and oracle utterances played an important part in ancient religion and medicine. Predictive methods of fortune telling include astrology, interpretation of the movements of heavenly bodies as influenced on earthly events, numerology, and the utilization of objects such as playing cards, tea leaves, crystal balls, dice, fire, water, and scattered salt. Fortune telling, as a process of character analysis, can take such forms as graphology, the study of handwriting, physiognomy, physiognomy, the study of facial characteristics, and phrenology, the study of contours on the skull, and palmistry, the study of lines on the palm of the hand. Now, because we're talking about fortune telling and prophecy and seeing the future, there is always going to be those individuals who say that this is an element of pseudoscience. It's something that cannot be proven. And even if you show an instance of an individual predicting something that's going to happen, and that's something that they predicted actually coming to pass, you're still going to have the naysayers because you can't put it into a test tube and run the normal scientific test on a prophecy, the same type of test that you can run on a living organism. You're always going to have individuals that are in doubt, and doubt is good. Never believe everything that you are told. However, open your mind up to the fact that what if it is possible through various means to peer beyond the veil of time and space and see what is going to occur. And right off the bat, we see that this idea has existed for thousands of years. And we only know this because of written history. It is quite possible and extremely likely that the concept of fortune telling and prophecy existed for tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years, maybe even millions of years. But since we do not have written records going back hundreds of thousands of years, there's no way to really know for sure. But we know as soon as mankind began to write, some of our earliest writings contain prophetic utterances. Okay. And so we see right off the bat that some of these prophecies, they come in the form of dreams. Sometimes there's oracles that tell you what's going to happen. Some people use astrology. They know how to read the stars. They know how to read the alignment of the planets, and they can predict the future based on omens in the sky. Some people use numerology. They understand how numbers, the science of numbers and patterns of numbers can give an individual insight into the future. Individuals use playing cards, tea leaves, crystal balls, dice, fire, water, smoke, animals. All of these things is the tools of various fortune tellers. So what we're going to do, we're going to get into this video and I'm going to show you 5 different Negroes, right, who could see the future. And we're going to look at the different methods that they used. And we're going to be seeing if there's any evidence that what they saw actually came to pass. All right, let's go a little further. Let's get into the video. All right, so on your screen, I'm showing you the Wikipedia of an individual named William Wells Brown. Now, William Wells Brown, he is one of our ancestors who was born enslaved. He escaped from slavery, and he became a very prolific and influential figure in African American history. He was an abolitionist, he was a writer, he was a historian, and he was a comedian. Now, he has several accolades for being the first descendant of slaves, or man born enslaved, or African American. You know, they change our names so often to do several things. And so while William Wells Brown isn't the fortune teller, he documents two of the fortune tellers that I'm going to be highlighting in this video. But let me give you a little background on William Wells Brown. He was born in 1814, and he died and moved on to the realm of the ancestors on November 6, 1884. He was an American abolitionist, a novelist, a playwright, and an historian. He was born into slavery near Mount Sterling, Kentucky. Brown escaped to Ohio in 1834 at the age of 19. He settled in Boston, Massachusetts, where he worked for abolitionist causes and became a prolific writer. While working for abolition, Brown also supported causes including temperance, women's suffrage, the right to vote, pacifism, prison reform, and an anti-tobacco movement. His novel, Clotel, published in 1853, is considered the first novel written by an African American, and it was published in London, England, where he resided at the time. It was later published in the United States. Now, yes, he spent some time living in London, in England, and a lot of that was because at one point in the Americas, they passed a law known as the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, I believe it was. In 1850, they passed the Fugitive Slave Act, where they began to make it legal for slave owners and people working on the behalf of the slave owner, the quote unquote slave catchers, to go into these free northern states and arrest the slaves who had escaped to freedom on the Underground Railroad and on various means, and take them back to their plantation. So a lot of our ancestors, to escape being caught as part of this Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, they went overseas. A lot of them went to Canada to live, and a lot of them went overseas. Now, while this guy was overseas, William Wells Brown, the ancestor, he wrote books. One of the most famous is Clotel, but he also wrote several other books. Now, in one of his books, he wrote, it's called My Southern Home, or The South and Its People, and he describes his time as a slave on the plantation in the southern portion of the United States. And so what we're going to do, we're going to look at this firsthand account of one of our ancestors, and we're going to see what our ancestors had to say about this topic of fortune tellers in the Hoodoo spiritual system, or the Hoodoo religion. I know some people don't like to view Hoodoo as a religion. You know, I respect that. I understand it, but I don't have a problem with the word. Okay. So in the book, my Southern Home, he tells us about a powerful conjurer and fortune teller named Dinky. Now, Dinky is going to be the first fortune teller, the Negro fortune teller that we deal with. So on page 70 of his book, look what the ancestor says. He says, nearly every large plantation with any considerable number of Negroes had at least one who laid claim to be a fortune teller and who was regarded with more than common respect by his fellows. Now, I want you to think about that. There were large plantations scattered throughout the southern portion of the United States. Pretty much anywhere that slavery was legal, you had large plantations. And so this ancestor, it's not me saying it, is not some modern day historian saying it, is not somebody from another country saying it. This is an individual who was actually enslaved himself born during that time, giving you firsthand information. He's saying that nearly every large plantation with any considerable number of Negroes had at least one person who laid claim to being a fortune teller, and this individual was regarded and was respected by his fellow slaves, meaning that whatever he was saying or whatever she was saying appeared to be correct to the individuals that were enslaved right along with them. Okay, so let's not think that only one fortune teller or one prophet sprung up amongst our people in 400 years' time. That's not the case. There were several individuals who claimed to have this power and were believed to have this power. And most times when people are talking about like prophets and the prophethood and oracles and fortune tellers, a lot of times these individuals aren't standalone characters. They come from guilds. They come from a body of individuals who do this. A lot of them are taught how to do it by someone else. So even in ancient days, when you had the oracles and the prophets and the seers and the fortune tellers, etc., these were groups of individuals. It was not just one. It were groups of individuals who knew how to do it. And an individual could be taught how to do it. Yes, you could be born with the ability to sometimes get visions into the future, or you could be shown the craft. Okay. So the first takeaway I want you to take away from this, the first thing I want you to pay attention to as we move forward and I build my case, is that the idea of the fortune teller, the hoodoo fortune teller, was common. There were plenty of them, and we're only going to deal with 5. So look what they tell us about the conjurer and fortune teller Dinky. Dinky, a full-blooded African, large in frame, coarse featured, and claiming to be a descendant of a king in his native land, was the oracle on the Poplar farm. At the time which I write, Dinky was about 50 years of age and had lost an eye and was, to say the least, a very ugly looking man. No one in that section was considered so deeply immersed in voodooism, gopherism, and fortune telling as he. Now, gopherism, that is another term. When you hear somebody say a gopher or gopherism, they're talking about voodooism, they're talking about hoodoo, they're talking about occultism, etc., etc. What they're actually referring to is something that they call like gopher dust. Now, sometimes this dust was graveyard dirt, graveyard dust, or it was a powder, a concoction created by the conjurer, created by the hoodoo worker, and this powder was often used to protect the individual, to control the spirits in the spirit realm, or to bring harm on somebody. It was like a powdered potion. Okay, and they would just call it gopher dust. So one word that you're going to come across when you're looking at some of the writings of our ancestors, they're going to say gopherism. But when they say that, they're talking about voodoo, they're talking about hoodoo, they're talking about occultism, they're talking about the religion of our ancestors. And gopher dust or gopherism is literally like a magical power that has been created by the individual practicing the craft. Now, again, this powder could be made from several different things. A lot of times it was they're referring to graveyard dirt or graveyard dust. Dust from a graveyard or dirt from a graveyard was often used. So look, he say, although he had been many years in the Gaines family, no one could remember the time when Dinky was called upon to perform manual labor. He was not sick, yet he never worked. No one interfered with him. If he felt like feeding the chickens, pigs, or cattle, he did so. Dinky hunted, slept, was at the table at mealtime, roamed through the woods, went to the city, and returned when he pleased, with no one to object or to ask a question. Everybody treated him with respect. The whites throughout the neighborhood tipped their hats to the old one-eyed Negro, while the policemen or the patty rollers permitted him to pass without a challenge. The Negroes everywhere stood in mortal fear of Uncle Dinky. The blacks who saw him every day were always thrown upon their good behavior when in his presence. I once asked a Negro why they appeared to be afraid of Dinky. He looked at me, shrugged his shoulders, smiled, shook his head, and said, I ain't afraid of the devil, but I ain't ready to go see him just yet. He then looked around, he then took a look around and behind as if he feared someone would hear what he was saying, and then continued, Dinky's got the power, sir. He knows things, seen and unseen, and that's what makes him his own master. It was literally true. This man was his own master. He wore a snake skin around his neck, carried a petrified frog in one pocket, and a dried lizard in the other. So, anybody that has done, oh, we got one comment, Auto, Brother Ampu, Grand Rising, Auto, salute. Good to see you in the building, family, hotel. Good morning. Now, anybody who has done even a cursory or basic research into the time period of our ancestors' enslavement, they know that nobody black could come and go as they pleased. Not even the quote unquote free Negro, right? And especially if you were enslaved to somebody and you were seen on the roads by the patty rollers, you had to produce a pass. And if you didn't produce a pass, you would be whipped, you would be beat, and you would be taken back to the plantation that you came from. It is literally unheard of to hear of somebody enslaved being able to walk freely to the city and back without having a pass and the patty rollers not antagonizing them. Okay, and you never hear of someone saying that a person that was literally enslaved being their own master, coming and going as they're pleasing, not doing any work. I'm gonna say it again, not doing any work. This is unheard of. And so these slaves on this particular plantation, this plantation that the man writing this book, this is the plantation he was on. He seen this with his own eyes. They say that Dinky was able to do this because he had this power. And they say that he wore a snake skin around his neck and he carried a petrified frog in one pocket and a dried lizard in the other. Now, I know that may seem odd to us living in 2024. An individual with a snake skin around his neck or a petrified frog in his pocket. But what you have to understand is that virtually all spiritual systems have objects, okay, objects that they hold dear and that they keep on their person, and these objects are supposedly able to harness spiritual energy or focus the person's mind into harnessing spiritual energy. Have you ever noticed, you can even see somebody that's a Christian, what do almost all Christians wear if they have the means and they're in the jury? They wear a cross. And a lot of times they'll wear a cross with Jesus being crucified on it. Now, when you peel back the layers, what you have is a piece of jewelry with a crucifixion, a cross used for crucifixion on it. Now, the crucifixion is a form of execution. It is a murder weapon. It is a torture rack, right? And they'll even have the image of Jesus on there with his hands nailed to the cross. So they would have the body of their dying savior being tortured to death. And when they are afraid, when they are stressed, when they're extremely hurt, you will see instinctively they will grab their crucifix, they'll grab their cross, they may rock back and forth, they may pray, they may kiss it, they may hold it up to their face. Okay, and so when you really think about it, what's the major difference between having a dying man on a cross and a snake skin around your neck or a petrified frog? What's the difference between a dead frog and a dead human? Yes, a frog isn't a human, but I'm I'm just highlighting the propensity for an individual in a religious faith to have things associated with that spiritual system in order to mentally harness spiritual power. You even have with Catholics, they have something that's called rosary beads. They have these rosary beads that they hold when they pray. And even if you take it outside of a spiritual sense, right? A spiritual sense, you have people who literally wear animal skin as clothing. Like, I'm pretty sure probably something you have on right now is made of cotton. Cotton comes from what? Sheep. So don't think of the snake skin, the petrified frog, and the dry lizard as, oh, that's crazy. Why would you have a dry lizard in your pocket? Well, why would you have anything that was made from an animal on your body? Why would you have a cross? Why would you have Jesus? Why would you have any of these items? Okay, so let's just try to zoom out and see the similarities between a lot of these traditions. But apparently the spiritual tradition that Dinky practiced, these petrified animals, the petrified frog, the dried lizard, the snake skin, they were particular to the faith that he practiced. Now in the book My Southern Home, William Wells Brown, he tells about a particular story of Uncle Dinky, the conjurer, that highlighted some of his power. He said that at one point, the slave master got a new overseer to come and watch over the plantation. Now, this new overseer was a particularly harsh man, and he was known for being harsh. He was known for whooping slaves, and he was known for taking no shit, basically. And so his first day on the plantation, he called all of the slaves to him, and he basically wanted to let them know that he was in charge. They had to do what he had to say do, and he issued out jobs for all of them to do. You're going to do this today. You're going to do this today. You're going to do this today. Now, remember, an overseer is almost like a manager. Okay, a plantation was like a business. They grew crops, or they grew cotton, or they had some type of thing that was being produced on the plantation. The plantation was not just a big house. It was acres and acres of field where they grew things on, and these things that they grew, they used to sell. This is how the slave owner made money. And the slaves, yes, they were property, but they were also the workers. Just like if you go into a McDonald's, you have workers, but you also have the owner of the McDonald's. Now, the owner of the McDonald's, the one that paid the millions of dollars to buy the building, that individual doesn't really come in and operate the McDonald's on a day-to-day basis. No, that owner pays someone to be like a supervisor or a manager over the McDonald's. And then this supervisor, this manager, they are actually in the McDonald's on a day-to-day basis with the crew. And they say, hey, today you're working on the grill, you're working at the drive-thru, you're going to be doing maintenance, you're working at the fryer. Hey, go mop that up. Hey, go take out the trash. Hey, go rearrange things in the freezer. Okay, they operate the day-to-day oversight inside of the McDonald's. So the overseer, or so the slave owner, would be in this sense like the owner of the McDonald's. The overseer would be the manager inside of the store, and the employees would be the slave. And so the overseer would come and say, hey, I need y'all out in the field at this particular time. Today, we're going to be picking this squash. Today, we're going to be picking these watermelon. Today, we're going to be picking this cotton. So I need all of you over here doing this. I need you. They would get the younger slaves. Hey, I need you. Go over there to that river, that lake, that stream, that pond. I want you to walk over there, get some water, bring it back so they can drink the water and that they can keep working. That's how that would go. And he would get a group of women. Okay, I want y'all to be over here and I want y'all to be doing that. So the overseer is kind of the day-to-day handler of the slaves. So this particular overseer, he's telling the slaves what they're going to do on the plantation, right? And so all of the slaves turn out but Dinky. Then Dinky ends up, he's in his house, he's still asleep. He didn't wake up when he was supposed to. So he wakes up late. He comes out of his slave cabins. The overseer sees him. He's like, hey, who is that? They tell him, oh, that's Dinky, yada, yada, yada. And so the overseer is like, hey, man, look, I need to get order around here, right? I can't have any of you slaves thinking that y'all can disobey me. So what I'm going to do, since you woke up late and you didn't turn out for work when I told you to, I'm going to whoop you. And the overseer said, I always whoop a slave when I first get to a new plantation to establish dominance. So he says, Dinky, tomorrow I'm going to whoop you, right? Tomorrow I'm going to whoop you just to make it known. And so obviously this sends an uproar throughout the whole plantation because everybody is like, wait a minute, I've never seen Dinky do any work. And Dinky is this conjurer, this fortune teller. He has this spiritual power. He says that nobody can touch him. I wonder what's going to happen. And so the next day, the overseer gets up. He gets Dinky. He tells Dinky, hey, I need you to come over here to this barn, because a lot of times they would take him to the barn and they would have their mechanism set up to do the actual whipping. They would have posts that they would tie him to. They would have rope hanging from the ceiling that they would string them up on so they could whip them and leave them hanging all day. But the tools used for the torture at this particular plantation was inside of the barn. So he tells Dinky, hey, meet me over there in the barn. I'm finna deal with you. And so he goes off, the overseer goes off to go get his whip. Dinky starts going over to the barn, but Dinky tells everybody, basically, he ain't gonna put a hand on me. I promise you that. He not gonna touch me. So Dinky, the overseer, they go into the barn, and everybody, like the whole plantation, stops. Nobody's working. Nobody's lifting a finger. Nobody is even breathing because they're all waiting to see what's going to happen inside of this barn. So Dinky and the overseer, they stay inside of the barn for a certain amount of time. Then they come out. And when they come out, they're walking side by side. And amazingly, Dinky has not been whipped. And so everybody is like, man, I knew Dinky wasn't going to get whipped. Dinky got the power. He has this spiritual power. He knows how to do the hoodoo. But they're all wondering exactly what he did to escape being whipped. Now, on these plantations, you have what you call like slave quarters. There were a lot of like basically rundown homes on the plantation that the slaves lived in. This was the slave quarters. Now, certain slaves had to share their quarters with other slaves. So Dinky shared his slave cabin with a man named Uncle Ned. So everyone was asking Uncle Ned how to tell them what Dinky did in the barn, because they felt like if anybody knew, Uncle Ned would know, because he lived with Dinky. Now, Uncle Ned was about 90 years old, and although he did know what happened, he didn't tell anybody. And so what ended up happening is one of the women who had access to the house, she made Uncle Ned something good to eat, gave it to him, and was like, hey, Uncle Ned, she worked her magic, not real magic, but she worked her womanly magic and got Ned to tell her what happened. And so she comes back and she tells the people how Ned escaped being whipped, right? So look, check this out. So Ned, now I'm going to go back to what the ancestor says on page 74 of his book. He says, many of the older Negroes gathered around Uncle Ned, for he and Dinky occupied the same cabin. And the old, super annotated slave knew more about the affairs of the conjurer than anyone else. Ned told of how on the previous night before they went into the barn, Dinky had slept but little. He had closely inspected the snake skin around his neck, the petrified frog and dried lizard in his pockets, and had rubbed himself all over with gopher. And when he had finished, he knelt and exclaimed. Now, before I show you what Dinky exclaimed, the prayer that he made. Remember, I told you, gopher is like it's like a special power that the conjurer uses. A lot of times it's graveyard dirt, but it doesn't have to be graveyard dirt. And they would put this on their bodies to protect themselves, right? Even when they were escaping on the Underground Railroad, or when they were about to, when you hear about slave revolts, slave rebellion, slave uprising, when they would actually like go out there and kill white people, a lot of times they would put this gopher on their bodies to protect them while they fought. Okay, but look what Ned says Dinky's prayed the night before going into the barn. He says, "Now, good and lovely devil, for more than 20 years I have served you faithfully. Before I got into your service, the white folks bought and sold me and my old wife and children, and whipped me and half starved me. They did treat me mighty bad, that you knows. Then I used to pray to the Lord, but that did no good, because the white folks don't fear the Lord, but they fears you. And ever since I got into your service, I is able to do as I please. Now white dares to lay, wait, no white dares to lay his hand on me, and this is all owing to the power that you give me. Oh, good and lovely devil, please to continue that power. A new overseer is come here tomorrow, and he wants to get me in his hands. But, dear devil, I ask you to stand by me in this my trial hour, and I will never desert you as long as I live. Continue this power. Make me strong in your cause. Make me to be more faithful to you, and let me still be able to conquer my enemies. And I will give you all the glory and will try to deserve a seat at your right hand." With bated breath, everyone listened to Uncle Ned. All had the utmost confidence in Dinky's power. None believed that he would be punished. So we got something interesting here. In the story, Dinky is praying to the devil, and his reasoning, his logic is that, well, the white folks, they don't fear the Lord. I can pray to the Lord to save me, but they don't fear the Lord. They're praying to the same God, and they're praying to the Lord to keep our ancestors enslaved, and this is what's keeping a lot of our ancestors enslaved. So he says, look, they don't fear the Lord, but they fear the devil. So he says that he prays to the devil. Now, I want you guys to think about something. If when you're born, someone takes you outside and they point to a tree and they say, hey, that's a car, you're going to always call a tree a car. And whenever you say car, you're talking about a tree, but that individual thinks that you're talking about a car because of what they know a car to be. What I'm saying is, what an individual tells you the name of something is what you'll call that thing, even if it's wrong. So it's possible that Dinky was not praying to the actual devil of the Christian Bible, right? Not the individual that owns hell in the mythology, but rather whatever spiritual energy or spiritual force that he was taught could overcome the slave owners. An individual may have taught him to call that spirit, oh, that spirit is called the devil, because they have been trained to see things in a God and devil manner because they're enslavers or Christians. He wouldn't have any other name, because these are the names that have been told to him about how the Christian views things. And so, okay, if he calls this spirit the devil, he understands that they are afraid of the devil. So I'm going to utilize whatever it is that these people are afraid of to protect me from the slave master. Or he could have very well been praying to the devil that's actually in the Bible, the devil that we all know. But I think he's putting that devil name on that spiritual force, because that devil, it really would it really would invoke fear into the overseers. Okay, and you have to invoke something that the individual is afraid of. If you're afraid of dogs, I'm gonna use dogs. If you're not afraid of dogs, you love dogs, I'm not gonna use dogs. But moving right along. So what actually happened when they actually went into the barn? Well, it appears that Dinky showed the overseer a vision. He used this power to show the overseer some type of a vision that scared him enough, to where he would not lay his hands on Dinky. So we're going to look at what that actual vision is. Look, check this out. They say, when they got in the barn, the overseer said to Dinky, strip yourself. I don't want to tear your clothes with my whip. I'm going to tear your black skin. Then, you see, Dinky told the overseer to look in the east corner of the barn. He looked and he saw hell with all the torments and the devil with his cloven foot strutting about there, just as if he was cock of the walk. And Dinky told Cook being the overseer, that if he lay his finger on him, he called the devil up to take him away. And what did Cook say to that? Asked Jim. Let me alone. I didn't tell you all, said Nancy. Then, you see, the overseer turned pale in the face, and he say to Dinky, let me go this time, and I'll never trouble you anymore. And they tell us that from that point on, that overseer never bothered Dinky again. So there was obviously some type of power that this guy Dinky knew how to harness, that kept him safe from work, kept him safe from being whipped, and he could place a vision into the eyes of the individuals that he was dealing with. Now, whether or not you believe that Dinky was able to show this overseer that or not, this is the first-hand accounts coming from our ancestors, and it is a verified fact that the story happened. Dinky was going to get whooped. Dinky went into the barn. Dinky came out without being whooped, and Dinky was never messed with by that overseer again. Those are the facts that can't be disputed because the ancestor saw it with his own eyes. Now, we can debate whether or not Dinky showed him a vision. We can debate whether or not Dinky made this prayer to the devil, but we know that Dinky was not whipped. Okay, and we also know that spirits are real, spiritual forces are real, spiritual energy is real, visions are real. All of these things are real. It's just if you want to believe they unfolded in this way or not. That's basically up to you. But look what he says. He says, whatever caused the overseer to change his mind regard to the flogging of Dinky, it was certain that he was most thoroughly satisfied to let the old Negro off without the threatened punishment. And although he remained at Poplar Farm as overseer for 5 years, he never interfered with the conjurer again. So if you have an individual that's clearly displaying this ability to do whatever the hell he want to do and not be punished as a slave, mind you, and this individual is saying, hey, this is how I'm able to accomplish this, it lends a whole lot of credibility to how he's saying he's able to accomplish this. But Dinky was not only a conjurer in that manner, he also was a fortune teller. He also could read into a person's future. And one instance, or one example that we have of this, we have Dinky. Have you ever heard of a palm reader? Individuals that say that they can look at your palm and that they can see things about your life, see things about your future, see things about what's going to happen to you by looking into your palm and peering through that veil of time and space. Well, Dinky, with his version of fortune telling, at least there's one instance that we have recorded, it was similar to that. It was similar to a palm reader. Now, remember, what we saw earlier, there are numerous ways for an individual to tell a fortune, right? Look at this last line. Palm Street, study of lines on the palm of the hand. See divination. So reading a poem, right? I want you to think about something. Reading a poem as a means of divination goes back thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years for a fact. And it was practiced in several different areas. And so I'm going to show you one of our ancestors on the plantation claiming to have this ability. Now, this dude was a full-blooded African. So where did he learn this from, right? Where did he learn this from? And did it actually work for him? Well, we know he obviously did have some type of power, but let's look into his power of fortune telling. Now look what William Weld Brown says. The following illustration may be taken as a fair sample of the easy manner in which Dinky carried on his trade of fortune telling. Miss Martha Lemmy, being on a visit to Miss Gaines, took occasion during the day to call upon Dinky. The conjurer knew the antecedents of his visitor and was ready to give complete satisfaction in this particular line. When the young lady entered the old man's cabin, he met her, bade her be welcome, and tell what she had come for. So, Dinky has such a wide reputation of being able to tell someone's fortune that individuals are coming from other places to get him to do this for him. Not only black people, but white people. Miss Martha Lemmy was white. She came to that plantation, and while she was there, she said, hey, you know what? While I'm here, let me talk to Dinky and have Dinky read my future. So it's not only our ancestors saying that he could do this, it was also the whites at that time saying that he could do this, right? And multiple people came to him. So look what happens. So she, Miss Martha Lemmy, she took a seat on one stool, and now she's in Dinky's cabin. She went to the slave cabins to get her future read. She took a seat on one stool and he on another. Taking the lady's right hand in his, Dinky spit into its palm, rubbed it, looked at it, shut his one eye, opened it, and said, I sees a young gentleman, and he's rich and owns plenty of land and a heap of niggers, and lo, Miss Martha, he loves you. So get this. So this white lady goes to this plantation. She goes into the slave quarters of a slave to have him read her future. Now she is in such belief that this guy can read the future that she lets him touch her, take her hand, not only take her right hand, but he spit in it. Now, of course, we're thinking, oh, that's gross. I wouldn't let nobody spit in my hand, and I don't blame you. I wouldn't allow anyone to spit in my hand either. But what I'm pointing out is this white woman let a black Negro slave spit into her hand. Obviously, she was 100% convinced in his ability to read her palm and tell her her future. That's what we got to get from this. Her actions tell us that she is 100% sold on the powers that Dinky has. Okay? So look, the lady drew a long breath of seeming satisfaction and asked, are you sure that he loves me, Uncle Dinky? Oh, Miss Martha, I knows it like a book. Hotel Brooklyn Zoo, hotel. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. Hope you're having a wonderful day, family. So the dinner lady says, have you ever seen the gentleman that he's seeing with this sight? The lady inquired. The conjurer began rubbing the palm of the snow white hand, talked to himself in an undertone, smiled, then laughed out and saying, why, Miss Martha, as I lives, is Mr. Scott, and he's thinking about you now. Yes, he's got his mind on you this breast minute, but how he's changed since I seen him the last time. Now he's got side whiskers and a mustache on his chin. But let me see. Here's something strange. The web looks a little smoky, and when I get to that spot, I can't get along till a little silver is given to me. So Dinky is reading her future, but then he basically says, like, all right, if you want me to go a little further, hey, you gotta pay me. You know what I'm saying? You gotta pay me. This ain't for free. I'm not using my powers for free. I need a little money. And so the woman pulls out the silver. She pays Dinky. Dinky continues to give her reading, but he even describes who he's seeing, Mr. Scott, and describes what Mr. Scott looks like in that moment. And so he goes on to tell him that eventually they're going to be married, but there's another woman who's trying to get Mr. Scott, and the woman gets a little sad, but Dinky is like, hey, this is just what it is. But we see first off, we see a individual ancestor named Dinky who was purported to have these powers. He could come and go as he pleased. He avoided being beat. They claimed that he was able to show people visions. They say that he was able to read the future and tell someone their fortune. At least one method by reading their palm. And it was not only black people that he did this for, it was white people as well. Okay. And this white woman was so convinced that he could do this, she let the man spit in her hand. Crazy, crazy work. Crazy work. Now, this individual who wrote that book, William Wells Brown, he wrote several books. Now, another book that he wrote was called Narrative of William Wells Brown, A Fugitive Slave. Now, this book sold a lot of copies. I believe the only other slave narrative that sold more copies than his is the one that Frederick Douglass wrote. Frederick Douglass, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. I think his book came second only to that. Just goes to show how much of an influence this ancestor was. Now, in his book, The Narrative of William Brown, he tells us about another fortune-telling Negro. Remember, he said that every plantation of any size had one. So there was plenty of people that was going around claiming that they could see the future. Now, this individual that he's going to tell us about is a slave named Frank, right? Now, check this out. He says, I should have stated that before leaving St. Louis, I went to an old man named Frank, a slave, owned by Mr. Sarpy. This old man was very distinguished, not only among the slave population, but also the whites, as a fortune teller. He was about 70 years of age, something over 6 feet high, and very slender. Indeed, he was so small around his body that it looked as though it was not strong enough to hold up his head. Uncle Frank was a very good favorite with the young ladies who would go to him in great numbers to get their fortunes told. So again, we see that not only the blacks are going to these slaves to get their future, their fortune read, the whites are going to them as well. Now, that should illustrate to you how widespread their fame has become. And the only way that their fame can become widespread is if what they are saying is panning out as true. Okay? Because for a white person to go to a slave to get this done, they had to believe for some reason that the slave could do it. And I want you to think about something. All throughout history, for thousands and thousands of years, this has always been the case. There has always been people claiming to be able to see the future, and people coming from miles around to sit at their feet and have them prophesy and tell them what was going to come to pass. Now, a lot of people, they like to view our ancestors that were enslaved as less than human, less than, right? They don't want to see any greatness within that population that existed for those centuries. And what I'm trying to show with how I keep going back to what the ancestors said themselves. I'm trying to show that it was a lot more going on than meets the eye, you know, a lot more going on than meets the eye. And there was plenty of people who was coming from miles around to see them, talk to them, and have them um 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 really give them like spiritual advice. To ask someone to see the future, you're going to them for a spiritual reason. So look what he says. He says, as it was generally believed that he, Uncle Frank, could really penetrate into the mysteries of futurity. Now, generally, everybody believed this. Now, of course, we don't know 100%, but obviously, the people around them believed it. Now, whether true or not, he had the name, and that is about half of what one needs in this gullible age. I found Uncle Frank seated in the chimney corner about 10 o'clock at night. As soon as I entered, the old man left his seat. I watched his movements as well as I could by the dim light of the fire. He soon lit a lamp and, coming up, looked me full in the face, saying, "Well, my son, you have come to get uncle to tell your fortune, have you?" "Yes," said I. But how the old man should know what I had come for, I could not tell. However, I paid the fee of 25 cents, and he commenced by looking into a gourd filled with water. Whether the old man was a prophet or the son of a prophet, I cannot say, but there is one thing certain. Many of his predictions were verified. I am no believer in soothsaying, yet I am sometimes at a loss to know how Uncle Frank could tell so accurately what would occur in the future. Among the many things he told was one which was enough to pay me for all the trouble of hunting him. It was that I should be free. He further said that in trying to get my liberty, I would meet with many severe trials. So this guy is attesting to much of what Uncle Frank said came true. And he tells us of something that Uncle Frank told him that actually came true. He told him that he would one day be free. And in fact, William Wells Brown actually escaped to freedom. He actually tried to escape 2 times, got caught 2 times and brought back, and then he actually made it escape the third time. So this is a verified prediction or prophecy of Uncle Frank, that this man, Williams Wells Brown, would be free. But I want to show you something. Now, I've shown you a palm reader. Now, look at how Uncle Frank was able to tell the future. He says he commenced by looking into a gourd filled with water. A gourd filled with water. Now, what is a gourd? A gourd is it's like a fruit or a vegetable. I'm not 100% which one, but it grows on trees. Okay, it's like a living organism. Now these things, they grow in a certain shape, and the outer casing of them are so hard that people in various parts of the planet use them to as containers. They empty them out. They dig out the guts. They put water in them or whatever they want to store. Okay, and so this man, Uncle Frank, he had one of these gourds. He had it emptied out, and he had it filled with water. And he would look into this water, and by looking into this water, he was able to tap into future events. Now, remember what I told you guys. Remember what I told you guys at the very beginning when we looked at this basic definition of fortune telling. Look, they say one of the ways, or some of the ways, that people practice fortune telling. They use crystal balls, dice, fire, water. You can see water there is in blue, and scattered salt. So water has been used as a means of fortune telling for thousands of years, just like the reading of palms. So what he's doing isn't something new. He didn't create it on his own. He likely learned this from someone who came before him that just taught him in the particular craft. Now, what we have to understand is when we're talking about these things, Yes, some people are born and they can get certain dreams and they can get certain feelings that let them know what's going to happen in the future. But the vast majority of it is a person's contact, right, with the spiritual realm. You have to be connected to the spiritual realm in order to be able to see what's going to happen in the future. Even if it's something that comes to you in a dream, a person goes to sleep, they tap into the dream. In the dream, they tap into this unseen realm, this spirit realm, what I like to call a realm of the ancestors, where individuals go when they die. And from that, they're able to see things more clearly. So these people are connected with this spirit realm, and they're using these physical items in order to peer through the veil. So we've seen a palm reader, and now we see an individual who can take this gourd full of water, peer into it, and he's able to see the future. And there's many people, both white and black, coming from miles around to have him do this for him. And we have it verified that many of his predictions came true. That's the important part. Many of his predictions came true. Even the one that he gave William Wells Brown, that he would one day be free. Because in fact, he was one day made free. Okay. So we've dealt with Dinky and the palm reading. We've dealt with Frank and the utilization of water to see the future. So let's move on a little further. Next, I'm going to tell you about an ancestor named Alice Bradley. And she used tarot cards to tell the future. Another method of fortune telling. So this comes from the Georgia slave narratives, aka the oral histories. And this is our ancestor, Alice Bradley, aka Aunt Alice. Now, she runs cards and claims to be a seeress, someone who can see the future. Okay, look, Alice, matter of fact, let me zoom in on that. This one ain't as clear to see. Look, Alice Bradley, or Aunt Alice, as she is known to everybody, runs cards and claims to be a seeress. Apologetic and embarrassed because she had overslept and was straightening her room, she explained that she hadn't slept well because a dog had howled all night and she was uneasy because of this certain forerunner of disaster. So this is the interview that was conducted with her. And in this interview, we're going to see her talk about using the cards as a means of fortune telling. So look, she says, here it is, Monday morning, and with my back, the dog, and the rheumatics in my feet, it's too late to go to church. So come in, honey. I was glad to have somebody to talk to. Now, why did I highlight that? Now, listen, she's saying it's Sunday. It's too late to go to church. So the interviewer might as well come in and talk to her. Don't let that go over your head. This woman is a church going woman. Remember, I keep telling y'all that within Hoodoo, individuals can have elements of like Christianity embedded within the Hoodoo, within the African spirituality, within the occultism. The Christianity of our ancestors on the slave plantation was not the same Christianity that we have now. Okay, we got to understand that. Now, some people, yes, they didn't believe in no occultism, spiritualism. They were just straight as Bible as they could be. But I'm saying the vast majority, although they were saying that they were Christians hundreds of years ago, they weren't really Christians. That's just what they were saying. And going to church was like a cultural norm. It was a habit because on the plantation, they were forced to go to church. So regardless of what they believed, regardless of what they thought, they were forced to go to church. Literally forced to go to church. So when someone is forced to go to church, and then their children are forced to go to church, and then those children grow up and they're forced to go to church, and their children grow up and they're forced to go to church. Eventually, the child and the grandchild, they're growing up. They mama, they granddaddy, they think their great granddaddy, they always went to church. And so even if they're going to church and they're not fully invested in what church is, their mind is going to keep them going to church, and they're going to believe that, hey, maybe I need to just do church a different way, and maybe it's a way that I can do church right. And they want to manipulate what Christianity and church is to fit them. And they begin doing things that really isn't Christianity, but they still call it Christianity because they think that they have to. That's all they know. They don't know what else to call it. So here we have a fortune teller who's going to church, lending more credibility to what I told you Hoodoo was in the first place. Okay, that's why I highlighted that. And she believes in omens. You see how she said she hadn't slept well because a dog had howled all night, and she was uneasy because of this certain forerunner of disaster. They believed that if a dog howled all night, somebody was going to die. That's what that means. And they believe that from plantation to plantation to plantation to plantation. A lot of our ancestors believed that. They believed in omens. They believed if screech owls were making noise, somebody was going to die. Right? If it was Monday morning and the first person to come inside of your house was a woman, that was bad luck. There was plenty of omens. Now we know omens isn't really Christianity, but again, she's going to church and she's seeing the future. But let's get to some of her predictions, right? Now, she says that she runs cards and claims to be a seeress. So she's running cards. So the cards that she's talking about is tarot cards, okay? So what I want to do, I want to give you guys just a little information and background on tarot cards so you can kind of understand how she's claiming to be able to see the future. We've done palm reading. We've done looking into water. Now we're going to look into tarot card reading. Now, before I read this, admittedly, they aren't 100% sure where the practice of tarot carding originated, and they're not 100% sure when. Okay? From what they know, they have documented evidence of it in Italy. Okay? Evidence of it in Italy. So for the sake of this conversation, we're going to be looking at the origin of tarot cards in Italy because I'm going to the documented origins of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, it could have predated that. Likely it did from somewhere else. But let's go to what we said documented first, and let's track this thing down to Aunt Alice. There are even some speculation that it came from Egypt, but with a lot of magic and things like that, they always try to tie it back to Egypt because that's the origin of a lot of that stuff, magic in general. But I don't have any evidence of that. I study Egypt extensively. I've personally never seen tarot cards or the equivalents of it, but I have seen prophecy, fortune telling, and I have seen magic. Okay, but look, the earliest references to tarot all date to the 1440s and 1450s and fall within the quadrilateral defined by the northern cities of Venice, Milan, Florence, and Urbino, Italy. Because of the complicated nature of the game, by that point, it is likely that it had begun evolving earlier in that century. Tarot cards employed the same standard Italian suits with values from 10 to 1 and with 4 face cards, king, queen, knight, and knave, for a total of 56 cards. Alongside them were a full motto, which was a wild card, and the 21 trump cards. Sounds like a lot like a regular deck of cards, doesn't it? Tarot is a game of trick taking, as the many trump cards clearly indicate, and even though there are many variations, mostly minor, the rules of the game likely have not changed significantly since the 15th century. The present day association of tarot with fortune telling and the occult gained currency only in the 19th century and has nothing to do with the medieval tarot cards. That's the first thing that I want you to understand. Again, we do not know the absolute origin of it, but I'm talking about when it's documented in history. That's what I mean by the origins of it. The origins of it in documented history. In documented history, it was a game, a card game with these different pictures on it. A card game, much like the cards that people play blackjack with or people play poker with. Very, very similar. Now, it got it began to be used with the occult and fortune telling in the 19th century. What is the 19th century? From 1800 to 1900. Okay, 1801 to 1900. That is the 19th century. Now they're saying that that is when it uh, uh, really gained currency as being associated with the occult and fortune telling, because it, like I say, it was just a game before that. It wasn't created, documented, right? It wasn't created as a means to tell the future, which is okay, because just like with the individual's palm, the palm isn't created to tell the future, but you can use it to tell the future. A gourd full of water isn't created to tell the future, but you can use it to tell the future. The same thing with these particular cards. Remember, I told you the actual fortune telling is coming from an individual's connection to the spirit realm, the spirit world, the realm of the ancestors, a connection to this power to have this sight to see beyond time and space. This is the thinking of it. That's the thinking of fortune telling. Whether you believe it or not, this is what it is. So an individual can use a regular object, okay? An individual can use a regular object in order to determine future events. And so this card game became utilized as a means of fortune telling around the 19th century. Let's go a little further. According to a manuscript written by an unknown source in 1750, the 62 card Tarocco Bolognese from the 15th century was among the first decks to be used as a means of fortune telling. By the 1780s, people in France were assigning divine meanings to their decks as well, predominantly with the Tarot of Marseille, then the country's most popular playing cards. Now remember, these people in these European countries are immigrating to the Americas. So you're going to see elements of their culture coming to the Americas with them, right? Look, this movement was led by French occultist Jean-Baptiste Aletti, or Atelier, whose book, A Way to Entertain Yourself with a Deck of Cards, unreliably linked the tarot to ancient Egyptian texts. So we have this occultist guy, this French occultist, Jean-Baptiste. He, once the tarot cards started to being used by the occultists as a means of fortune telling, he linked a deck that he had to ancient Egyptian texts, because if you want to give your magic more credibility, you link it to something that predates it, that has an element of magic already tied to it. So individuals, when they hear Egyptian text, they're already thinking supernatural magic, power, gods, pyramids, sphinx, wonders of the world. Oh, the tarot cards come from Egypt. It gives it a more mystical appeal. Okay, but they have a actual source. They don't know who wrote it, but they know when the document was written. That seems to be one of the first decks used as a means of fortune telling. Okay, so in the 1750s, they used a deck that was created in the 15th century to tell an individual's fortune. So now we see the card game being transformed into a divination tool, right? Flow with me. So in 1789, Aliette, a new deck of tarot cards intending solely for supernatural use. This deck comprises 78 cards organized into two categories: the major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana features 22 cards, each denoting an allegorical figure: the magician, the high priestess, the empress, the emperor, the hierophant or pope, the hermit, the hanged man, the lovers, the devil, and the fool, or personification of an object: the wheel of fortune, the chariot, the tower, the star, the moon, the sun, and the world. Or abstract concept: strength, justice, judgment, temperance, and death. These cards are believed to hold the big secrets of spiritual self-awareness. So we have a card game being transformed into an occult tool used to tell the future. Then you have an individual creating more tarot cards or different decks of tarot cards that are not the ones that were used for the game, but a evolution of the game, and they are specifically used for supernatural purposes, and they are created with characters on them, and these characters, these signs, these symbols have certain meanings. Okay, now look, the major arcana features 4 suits: the suit of swords, the suit of batons, the suit of coins, and the suit of cups, of 14 cards each. Each suit in turn comprises 10 numbered cards and 4 court cards: the king, queen, knight, and jack. These cards are believed to hold the small secrets of everyday life. By the turn of the 20th century, from 1900s to the year 2000, by the turn of the 20th century, tarot cards, particularly the Tarot of Marseille, was so entwined with the occult that the Tarot Nouveau, a deck used solely for playing rather than predicting, was created. So then they had to create another deck to try to take it back to just simply playing a game, because now the evolution of the tarot cards has evolved into only occult use, supernatural, fortune telling. Now, whenever you say tarot cards to an individual, their mind is automatically going to go to fortune telling. So it has been totally usurped by the occult, which is okay. Okay, which is that's fine. That's fine. Now, to look, today the tarot continues to serve as both an ordinary card game and an occult ritual. While there are many ways to read tarot cards to tell one's fortune, a common approach is the 3-card spread. There are numerous variations of this method, including an easy technique that helps unlock and explain your past, present, and future. If you want to give it a try, you can follow these simple steps. So this is the basic way that they do it. They take the deck, they shuffle the deck, they stack the deck, then they pick up the top 3 cards and they place them in a row. They read the cards from left to right, using the cards' meanings to reveal secrets about your past, present, and future. So you have a deck of cards with characters on them, symbols on them, signs on them. These characters, signs, and symbols have a meaning. So you take the cards, you shuffle them, you stack them, you lay them out, and then you would, depending on the character, the sign, or the symbol of the card that you draw, the individual doing the reading, they're able to say, okay, this is what I see in your future based on these cards, right? But again, there has to be some type of a connection to the spirit, the spiritual realm, the realm of the ancestors. There has to be some type of connection to that in order for the right cards to be picked. This is, you don't have to believe it. I'm not telling you, I'm not trying to convert nobody to nothing, but I'm just teaching. This is the general idea. Okay, so when the ancestor says she is known to everybody to run cards and claims to be a seeress, these are the cards that she's running, and this is how these cards got to her hands. So let's look at what she said. So we're going to look at some of the predictions that she claims to have made, and some of them that she says were verified through this running of the cards. So look, she says, I loves to run the cards for my friends. I always tells them when I sees there's trouble in the cards form and shows them how to get around it if I can. None of the rest of my folks ever run the cards, but I've been at it ever since I was just a little gal, picking up old, wore out cards that had been thrown away because I could see things in them. I remember one time when I was small and didn't know so good what the cards was telling me that a rich man, one of the richest in Wilkes County, was at our place. I told him the cards when I run them. I saw something was going to happen on this place that two colored men would be tangled up with, but I didn't know just what was going to happen. And sure enough, two colored men set fire to his barns and burned up all his horses and mules. The onlyest thing they saved was one riding horse. They catch the men's and they served time for what they done. One of them died way out yonder where they sunk them. So now look, I told you, in order for this to work, you have to have some type of connection to the spirit realm, or you have to be taught one of the particular methods by someone who knows what they're doing. You have to be taught how to do it, trained up in the craft, right? So this young lady, Aunt Alice, obviously she was born with a better connection than the people around her. And so she said that she would find old card decks that people had thrown away, and she liked to play with them and run cards for people, because when she would look at the cards, she would see things in them without being trained. She would see what the cards were telling her without anyone telling her the deeper meaning of the card. Now, as she got older, people were able to explain to her, okay, this character means this symbol means that, this character means this symbol means that. And so the sight that she already had, the insight that she already had into what the cards was saying, right, was it was enhanced by individuals giving her more information on the particular deck that she had in her hand. And so she was able to, okay, that's, like she may see a card and she may, she may get a feeling of, this is like it's saying danger, something is danger. But then somebody may say, that card, that's the Hierophant. The Hierophant is like the Pope or a religious figure. So if you see danger when you look at this card about the Hierophant or the Pope, that's saying that there is some kind of religious or spiritual danger that's, coming along the way. And you would be able to piece together the story based on what you're seeing with your spiritual eyes and the meaning of the card that you're looking at. And so she gained a reputation from this from a young girl. And again, you're going to see the same thing happening. People were coming from all around to get her, a young slave girl, to read their future for them, just like they came to see Dinky, just like they came to see Frank. Okay, now we're seeing that they're coming to see Aunt Alice as well. Look, she say, I remembers one white lady way out in Alabama sent a note asking me to run the cards for her. So she's in Georgia. The fame of her has reached Alabama, across state lines. Alabama and Georgia is close, but across state lines. And this person in Alabama has sent a letter like, hey, I can't make it all the way over there to her, but get her to run the cards for me. So she says, I run them and got one of my friends to write her what I seen. They had a run bright, and that was good luck. One time, I run the cards for two sisters that had done married two brothers, and the cards run so close, kin, that I was able to tell them how they was married, and they told me that I was right. And just a few days ago, an old man come to see me thinking that he was poisoned. When I run the cards, I seen his trouble. He had been drinking and was sick. So I just gave him a big dose of soda and cream of tartar, and he got better. Then I told him to go on home and that nobody hadn't done nothing to him. Needed was a little medicine. So people are sending her letters from other states. People are coming to her, and she's able to deduce that they're married. She's able to see things about their personal lives that is being confirmed. People are coming to her and being like, oh, I think I've been poisoned. Run the cards, see what happened to me. Tell me how to heal myself. She's running the cards, seeing that they haven't been poisoned. They're just sick because they've been drinking. And she gives them some type of remedy. So she's using these cards to get a lot of information. So look, then she says, I told Mr. Dick Armel of how he was going to get killed if he went up in his airplane that day and begged him not to try it, but to wait. He wouldn't listen and went on and got killed just like I told him he would. Now she's actually naming names and events that can be verified, right? Everybody, listen, everybody didn't have an airplane in the early 1900s. This interview was taken in 1936, 1937. So everything she's saying had to have happened prior to that. So everybody didn't have an airplane during these days. So if she's talking about a man, she's naming him, and she's saying that he got killed in this airplane, this could easily be disproven. Easily be disproven. So we have to assume that she's telling the truth. This guy actually died in a plane crash, and she had already told him, if you go up in your plane that day, you're going to get killed. But he didn't listen, and he died. She even said that she ran the cards for his wife. I run the cards for Miss Armel lots of times, for I liked him, and he was a fine man. I run the cards for him one time, for he went to the World's Fair, and the cards run bright, and his trip was a good one, just like I told him it would be. So there was a time he was going to the World. Told him, hey, everything going to be good, everything going to be fine. And it was. If only he had listened to her. I'm gonna cut this off for just a second. If only he had listened to her when she told him about the plane. But unfortunately, he didn't. Okay, hold on, let me pull this screen share back up. I had to just stop sharing for a second to check something. Okay, so we see that this individual from running the cards is giving all kinds of insight into future events. She's even seeing somebody's death, and that death can be confirmed. So look, the interviewer goes on to say, Alice doesn't charge for running the cards. She says she doesn't have a license and is very thankful for anything that visitors may care to give her. She will not run the cards on Sunday. That's bad luck, she said. Come back someday when it ain't Sunday, and I'll see what's in the cards for you. So why is she not running the cards on Sunday? Obviously, she's not running the cards on Sunday because that's known as the Lord's Day. And again, this occultism is mixed in with Christianity, almost indistinguishable from each other. And we keep seeing evidence of this. So when I tell you what hoodoo is, you got to believe me, because all of the primary documentation basically says that I'm correct. This is what I'm getting it from. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to the next Negro who was able to see the future. Now, this guy is probably the most famous prophet that existed during the time of slavery. And no, I'm not talking about Booker T. Washington. I'm talking about Nat Turner. And Nat Turner, just like these other individuals, was called a prophet. He was known for being able to see the future. Now, what we're going to ask ourselves is, why did they call him a prophet? Right? What did he prophesy? That's the first thing you got to ask. What did he prophesy, man? We do know Nat Turner led an insurrection. You know, he killed around, him and his group, they killed around 61 whites. He was on the run for a couple of months. He was arrested and he was killed. And a lot of other people were killed with him. But what did he prophesy? Did he prophesy his rebellion? Right? No. Did he prophesy what was going to happen to him at the end of his rebellion? No, that's not his actual prophecy. See, for a long time, I read about Nat Turner. I studied about Nat Turner. I watched movies and videos about Nat Turner, but I never asked the question, why did everybody call him a prophet? A prophet predicts something. A prophet makes a prophecy. What prophecy did Nat Turner make? And you kind of don't ask that question because they also just try to say that, oh, and he was a Negro preacher, he was a preacher, he was a preacher. And so you just think, oh, okay, well, maybe they just saying he was a prophet because he was a preacher and he taught out the Bible, and so that's why he was the prophet. But no, he actually made a prophecy, and that prophecy definitely came true. But watch this. First, I want to show you that not only is he called a prophet in modern times, he was actually called a prophet by our ancestors. Now, Booker T. Washington, we all know, was born enslaved. He gained his freedom with the Civil War. Anyway, Booker T. Washington says, when a boy in Virginia, I recall the stories that were told around the cabins by the older slave men and women of the prophet Nat Turner, as he was called, and of the dreadful incidents that took place during the insurrection of 1831. During his boyhood days, I have heard, his mother, who was known to be a very religious woman, taught him that, like Moses, he was to be a deliverer of his race. So it was known around all of the slave cabins and slave quarters that Nat Turner was a prophet. Now, mind you, Booker T. Washington was born after the man was dead. So after the man was dead, they were still calling him a prophecy. So what prophecy did he make? What prophecy did he make? That's the question. That's the question that I want you to ask yourself. And real quick, I want to show you that not only did our ancestors say that he was a prophet or attest to the fact that he was called a prophet, it's actually in the newspapers of that time too. One newspaper article said that General Nat was no preacher, but in his immediate neighborhood, he had acquired the character of a prophet, like a Roman sibyl. He traced his divination in characters of blood on leaves alone in the woods. He would arrange them in some conspicuous place, have a dream telling him of the circumstance, and then send some ignorant black to bring them to him, to whom he would interpret their meaning. So we have him being attested to as a prophet by his own people, and we have him being attested to as a prophet by whites. But what did he prophesy? I'm going to tell you. Whether you believe it or not, Nat Turner prophesied the coming Civil War. I'm going to say it again. Nat Turner prophesied the coming Civil War. Now, I don't think even he really understood what was going to happen. He was just receiving visions. He was receiving dreams. He was seeing strange sights in the woods. He found leaves with strange hieroglyphic writings on them. He was seeing strange signs in the sky. And if you read about him, he was always trying to do his best to interpret what was going to happen. But he never fully understood exactly what it was that he was seeing, which would make sense. If you're enslaved and you see a vision of the Civil War or an aspect of the Civil War where there are uniformed black troops fighting uniformed white troops, you would obviously be confused by that. You've never really seen a black person in a uniform carrying a gun in the army. You've never seen an army of blacks, let alone an army of blacks fighting an army of whites. And you would have to wonder, how could this even take place? See, in today's world, it's easy for us to visualize that. But take yourself back to the time period of our ancestors' enslavement. Imagine a slave being shown images of the Civil War, but not just regular images of the Civil War, white on white, but images of the Civil War of infantries of blacks with weapons and uniforms, marching, taking formation, fighting whites in uniform and taking formation. That you would have to, when you see it, you would have to be like, what the hell? What does this even mean? What am I even seeing? Is this real, or does this mean something else? Which led him up to the insurrection, because he just kept seeing these visions of blacks going to war with the whites, and which led him into, okay, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to kick off this war, this great battle, this great fight. If they talk about it, they tell you that in Nat Turner's plan, the plan literally was to take the group that he had, go from plantation to plantation, killing everybody in the big house that he found, liberating the slaves, adding them to his army, going to the next plantation, killing everybody that he found, liberating those slaves, adding them to his army. And he thought by that means he was going to amass a great army of blacks that was going to be able to go to war with the whites that were enslaving them. Because what he saw was an army of blacks moving in formation against an army of whites moving in formation. So he thought he had to create that formation, obviously, right? So I want you to check this out. In the book, The Confessions of Nat Turner, now a lot of people try to debunk this book. They try to say that the man Gray who wrote it was lying. But you can see attestations to everything in this book in newspaper articles and primary documentation. He didn't make this up. This is just what was going on. But look what Nat Turner says about one of the many visions that he had. He says, and about this time, I had a vision. A vision. Now, I'm not forcing you to believe it, but I'm showing you what the man thought himself. Nat Turner said, about this time I had a vision, and I saw white spirits and black spirits engaged in battle. He saw white spirits and black spirits engaged in battle. Now, obviously, he did not think that this was just some type of war that was going to go on in the heavens. He didn't think that this was a battle between angels and demons. Because if he thought that this was a battle between angels and demons, he never would have tried to act it out in real life on the ground. These white spirits and black spirits, it's obvious that he interpreted that as flesh and blood human beings. So he saw white spirits and black spirits engaged in battle. Now watch what he says. And the sun was darkened. The thunder rolled in the heavens and blood flowed in streams. And I heard a voice saying, such is your luck, such you are called to see, and let it come rough or smooth, you must surely bear it. You must surely bear seeing this. You know how many people died in the Civil War? You know how bloody it was? There are literal stories about rivers running with the blood of the human beings that were murdered. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands were killed. And if you know the story of Nat Turner, one of the ways in which he determined when he was supposed to start his insurrection was because he saw a comet in the sky. He saw a vision in the heavens. He saw a comet in the sky, and he didn't see a comet in the sky. He saw a solar eclipse. He saw an eclipse. And when he saw that eclipse, he was like, oh, that's the sign that the great battle is supposed to begin. Because in the vision, he saw white spirits and black spirits engaged in battle. He saw the sun darken. He heard thunder in the heavens. He heard lightning and thunder roaring in the heavens, and he saw blood flowing in streams. So that's why he was looking for an eclipse. And when he saw an eclipse, and this is verified that there was an eclipse leading up to when he actually led his insurrection, because in the vision he saw the sun being darkened. So when he saw the sun darkened in real life, he was like, oh, this is it. This is it. So that's what I want you to understand, that Nat Turner was actually predicting the coming Civil War. Now there are various other predictions that he made, right? But look, hold on, let me see. What did he say? Okay, look. At this point, he says, I now began to prepare them for my purpose by telling them something was about to happen that would terminate in fulfilling the great promise that had been made to me. What was the promise that was made to him? That his people were going to be free. So he began telling everybody, once he was getting these visions, that something was going to happen. This great battle between white spirits and black spirits, this great battle, and it would terminate in the fulfilling of the great promise. What is the great promise? That his people would be free. So something was going to happen, a battle between white spirits and black spirits, and this battle would terminate in his people being free. That's what he knew. That's what he knew in his heart. But he didn't understand that that was the coming civil war. Now, how do we know that that was the coming civil war? How do we know that? Because look, check this out. Check this out. Now, we all know this. We all know this. The Emancipation Proclamation, we all know this. The Civil War terminated, or it led up to the great promise that Nat Turner is saying that was made to him, right? Whereas on the 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord, 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States containing, among other things, the following, to wit, that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then thenceforward and forever free. Thenceforward and forever free. Now, you can say what you want. This document right here, this is the legal legislation that granted us our freedom. Say what you want about it. But that's just like the slavery was legal. So it had to be something enacted through legislation that freed us and made it illegal to enslave us. It was this document. Now, why was this document signed? Why did Abraham Lincoln do this? He did this because of the Civil War, not because he got a vision and God told him that he needed to free the slaves. And that's not how it happened. He realized that the only way that he could win the Civil War was to free the slaves. So he did it. It was like a tactic of war. It was a tactic of war. That's all it was. But it ended up with the freeing of the enslaved people, the enslaved individuals, right? But again, what did the prophet say? The prophet say, I now began to prepare them for my purpose by telling them something was about to happen. We're talking about future events, prophetic future events. Something was about to happen that would terminate in fulfilling the great promise that had been made to me. So something was going to happen, and that something that happened would terminate in our people getting free. That something was the Civil War. Because when the Civil War kicked off, couple of years into the Civil War, what happened? His people got free. That was the great promise that was made to him in the vision. Okay? And look, I already showed you this, but I'm going to show it to you again. He said, about this time, I had a vision. After he started telling them that, hey, look, something going to happen, and that's going to terminate in us being free, man. Then he says, about that time, I had a vision, and I saw white spirits and black spirits engaged in battle. Now, that was ludicrous. That was ludicrous to him at that time. Nobody had ever seen a regiment of black troops marching in formation with guns, going to war with a regiment of white troops, going to battle. That made no sense. He didn't understand it, but he saw it. Now, look, after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, I want y'all look at the dates. Now look, that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863. So this is 1863. January 1863 is when the Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect. So the Civil War has led to our people being free. Now in that same year, 1863, several months later, what happens? What happens? They make it to where the Union Army can not only free the slaves, but they can also create what we call the colored troops. They made regiments of blacks. They armed them, they put them in uniform, and they sent them, they deployed them out into battle. And you actually had blacks in uniform, in formation with guns, fighting against whites. in the American Civil War. The same thing that Nat Turner said that he saw. A great battle between white spirits and black spirits, which was unheard of. Had it not been for the Civil War, and had it not been a necessity for them to win the Civil War, they never would have put guns in the hands of blacks like that and let them go to war with white people back then. That was not going to happen. Even before they made the colored troops, they was debating. They was like, man, if we give them guns, then they're going to turn on us because we enslaved them. They're going to kill us. We can't trust them. But they had no choice, because what Nat Turner was shown was coming to pass. It was prophecy that must be fulfilled. We had to be free. Look, a bureau is established in the Adjutant General's office for the record of all matters relating to the organization of what? Colored troops. An officer will be assigned to the charge of the bureau with such number of clerks as may be designated by the Adjutant General. So this organization of colored troops is yet another fulfilled prophecy of Nat Turner. This is what he was talking about. This is what the guy saw. That's why the guy seemed so crazy. They didn't know what he was talking about. And on some level, he didn't even know what he was talking about. He was just saying, hey, this is what I saw, man. This is what I saw. Take it or leave it. Love it or hate it. This is what I saw. And see, a lot of people, they try to say that, oh, Nat Turner didn't know what he was talking about. If he really saw something, if he was really chosen, if he really had a vision, he died. He was killed. So how could he have any type of prophetic vision? Well, they asked him something like that, right? Because he was talking about his visions. And the man that was interviewing him asked him a specific question. He said, do you not find, look, question, do you not find yourself mistaken now? Like, now that you're about to be killed, now that you're about to be hung for your insurrection, do you not now find yourself mistaken about these visions that you say that you was having, that something was going to happen, that your people not free? Everybody that was in your insurrection, they're about to be killed. They're captured. We've been killing them. They're about to kill you. The insurrection has been put down. Do you now find yourself mistaken? He could have said, well, man, you know what? Maybe I didn't see what I saw. Maybe I didn't. Maybe the great promise wasn't that we was all going to be free, because obviously we're not free. I'm not free. Like, damn, maybe I was wrong. No. What was his answer? Was not Christ crucified? Now, that was a gut shot. That was a head shot, because he's saying that, okay, there are all these prophecies about this guy Christ, this guy Jesus. He was supposed to do all these things to usher in the kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And he had all these prophecies, and all these prophecies pointed to Christ. All these prophecies pointed to Jesus. He is supposed to do this. He got to do this. He got to do that. He got to do this. And he was still crucified. And they said the same thing when they put him up on that cross. If you the son of God, bring yourself down. But he's like, no, you know what? This has to happen. This is how it's supposed to happen. This is how the prophecy unfolds. I'm meant to be hung on the cross. I'm meant to bleed. I'm meant to die. This is part of the prophecy as well. Just because me, the man, Jesus Christ, is dying, you think that means everything is failed? No, this is part of it. And so what Nat Turner was saying when he said, was not Christ crucified? He was telling them like, no, the great promise, I still have 100% faith in the great promise. It's still going to be fulfilled. But obviously, this is just a part of it. I must suffer this. Hey, obviously I'm supposed to die, but he didn't lose faith. He didn't lose faith up until the end because he knew what he saw. Right? He knew what he saw. Now let's move on. I'm finna show y'all guys one more man that claimed that he could see the future. And I'm going to show you guys a little more proof that some of his prophecies actually came true. Now, this man is known as Prophet Andrew Jones. Now, this is interesting because they actually documented this man's prophecies in the newspaper, right? So look at this headline. Now, this is from a Key West Citizen newspaper published February 23rd, 1927. Okay. Excuse me. So, wait, hold on. Give me just a second. Just a second. All right. Okay. Now, this guy Andrew Jones, right? He was born around 1854. Again, he was born enslaved. I don't know if he escaped or whatever, but he most likely gained his freedom at the end of the Civil War. So look what he says. It says New York City to perish in 1931, says Negro prophet of disaster. Now here we are in 2024. New York City is still there. So we know that New York City did not perish in 1931. So that's not the actual prophecy that we're going to be looking at. But we're going to be looking at some of this guy's prophecies, and the newspaper, they are the ones that are saying he was correct. But look, a prophet of disaster. Prophet Andrew Jones, age 73, who lives in Philadelphia and has tramped up and down the country for the past 45 years, teaching the doctrine of preparedness against earthquakes, floods, wars, disease epidemics, and other direful events. So for 45 years, he's been making prophecies. And so a lot of these prophecies have been documented, okay, have been documented. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at some of these prophecies that have been documented and that have been confirmed, right? That have been confirmed. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. This man actually made prophecies, and those prophecies actually came true as well. So let's go to the, see what it says, sees America conquered. All nations of the world will array themselves against Uncle Sam, with the possible exception of Germany, where the no. That's his prophecy about New York. That's not the one I'm gonna talk about. Let's go to the highlighted part. Sorry about that. You can read that though if you want. Look, they say, and strange to say, the prophet daily claims thousands of believers, for he has hundreds of clippings to support his prophecies in the past. So he has hundreds of newspaper clippings to support his prophecies, because what would happen is he would make these prophecies, it would get published in the newspaper that he said it, and so this newspaper publishing has a date on it, and then when the event happened, they could look back and say that, oh damn, wait a minute, this guy said that this was gonna happen. And so he would keep these clippings to prove, like, hey, look, I said this on Monday, this happened on Tuesday, I predicted it before it was going to happen. But in some cases, it was years prior, not just a Monday, Tuesday thing. But look, here are a few of his predictions as shown by the newspaper clippings. So these are confirmed prophecies that they're about to tell us. Confirmed. Whether you, however you think he made these prophecies, that's on you. But it's confirmed that he did it. So look, the Johnstown flood predicted in 1884 happened in 1889. So in 1884, he went to this particular town and he told this particular town that they were going to be hit by a flood. He predicted it to them, told them that it was going to happen, and for whatever reason that it was going to happen. And then 5 years later, in 1889, guess what? That same place was hit with a flood. One prophecy, one prediction. Let's go further. The Baltimore fire, foretold in Scranton, PA, at the actual time the fire started. So now he's in another place. He gives them another prophecy, another prediction, tells them what's going to happen. Hey, there's going to be some type of fire. Remember, he's like a doomsday prophet. He's warning people about this. He's being shown disasters. And so he's going around warning people that, hey, these disasters are coming. This is what I saw. This is where the disaster is going to hit. So he's telling them in Baltimore, hey, there's about to be a fire, etc., etc., etc. They probably don't believe him. Bam, the fire started. Boom, again, verified prophecy. Check this out. The Spanish-American War, predicted during a sermon preached in 1897. So this pastor, this prophet Andrew Jones, he predicts the Spanish-American War while preaching a sermon. This sermon gets recorded. This sermon gets documented. And he does this in 1897. Now look at this. He does this in 1897. He predicts the Spanish-American War. When does the Spanish-American War actually begin? Look, now this is the actual proclamation, a copy of the actual proclamation that kicked off the Spanish-American War. Whereas, by an act of Congress approved April 25th, 1898, he said it a year ago. It is declared that war exists and that war has existed since the 21st day of April AD 1898, including said day, between the United States of America and the Kingdom of Spain. So the Spanish-American War, this is it. The war between the Kingdom of Spain and the United States kicked off when? 1898, according to the official document. And according to the record, this man predicted it during a sermon that he preached in 1897, a year before the war kicked off. So this is another confirmed prediction. But let's go further. On June 11, 1914, Prophet Jones saw the world in a conflict. What happened around 1914, family? World War I. World War I. So now he's predicted World War I. He's predicted the Spanish-American War. He's predicted the Baltimore fire. He's predicted the Johnstown flood. And he predicted other things, but these are just the things that this newspaper could verify themselves that he said prior to the event. And these are the things that they are deciding to publish, right? So he also predicted World War I kicking off. Look, what else? The assassination of President McKinley. Now, President McKinley, oddly enough, he was the president during the Spanish-American War, right? Look, hold on. Let me show you something. Look, right here. Now, therefore, I, William McKinley, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the power vested in me by the Constitution and the laws, do hereby declare and proclaim. And he goes on to talk about the Spanish-American War. So William McKinley, President of the United States, was president of the United States during the Spanish-American War that the man predicted. He was one of the presidents that were assassinated. There's a long line of American presidents that were assassinated. This guy predicted the assassination of a president. Look, then he predicted the Galveston flood and the attempted murder of President Roosevelt. So President Roosevelt, they tried to kill him. This guy predicted the attempted murder of him. He said, hey, they're going to try to kill President Roosevelt. Another prediction about another president, death and destruction. And you see this where it says that he predicted the Galveston flood. You know, look, we even have more information about how that actually took place. So we can see how he gave some of these prophecies, right? Look, check this out, family. Now, in another newspaper article, hold on. In another newspaper article, this is the New York Sun, posted July 7, 1918. Now, this guy is talking about supernatural powers of the Negros. And in order to talk about this theory that he has, this sixth sense, that he calls a jungle sense. These people crazy. But this sixth sense that he says that some of these Negroes have, he mentions, not by name, but he mentions Andrew Jones because he mentions the prophet of the Galveston flood, the same Galveston flood that newspaper confirmed happened. So look at how he says it took place. Look, a prophet of the flood. The following story of the Negro prophet and the Galveston flood is vouched for by Dr. Means. 3 weeks before the great tidal wave, an old Negro entered the office of the Galveston News and uttered such loud cries and lamentations, declaring that the city was to be engulfed by the seas, that he was led from the office. It was a good story, however, and as such was written up by a staff reporter. So Prophet Andrew Jones has been going around the country 45 years making predictions. He's going from city to city saying that, hey, this is what I saw about your city. This is what's going to happen. Whether they believe him or not is on them. So he went to Galveston, went inside of the office of the Galveston News and was like, man, look, the city finna be engulfed by the seas. There's finna be a major flood. Y'all need to do something about it or a lot of people gonna die. He makes such an uproar, they kick him out of the office. But it's so interesting, they write a story about it. which is good because it documented the prophecy before the event happened. And so, look, he says, a week from that date, at the same day, man, hold on, my bad, I mean, a week from that date, at the same day, and at that same day and hour, the Negro prophet reappeared and repeated his warning. So he waited for a week, came back on the same day and hour. So let's say he went in on a Monday at 2 o'clock. Next Monday at 2 o'clock, he came back. It says the Negro prophet reappeared and repeated his warning. He told him again, listen, the city is going to be engulfed by the sea. I saw it. I see these things. A lot of people are going to die if we don't warn them or we don't do something. He says he had worked himself up into such a frenzy that he had to be forcibly ejected from the office. So they kicked him out again. They didn't listen. 1 week later, the old Negro appeared again, dropped on his knees on the floor, and in tears besought the white people to give heed. When led from the office, the old Negro declared that this was his last visit, that before the week was out, the city would be destroyed. A reference to the files of the Galveston News 3 weeks before the date of the flood will corroborate this statement, which might be explained as an illusion and a coincidence. So 3 weeks before, now the flood is real. Now 3 weeks before the flood, this guy shows up. He tells him it's going to happen. They kick him out. He come back the next week, tell him it's going to happen. They kick him out. The next week, he come back. He tell him what's going to happen. He dropped to his knees. He begging them to listen to him. Like, look, y'all have to, this is what's going to happen. Now you have to do something to save life and property. They don't believe him. They kick him out. He say, well, look, this is the last time I'm going to show up. Before the week is out, the city going to be destroyed. The flood going to hit you. And sure enough, the flood hit him. Sure enough, the flood hit him. But that's what you got to understand about prophecy a lot of times. A lot of times when the prophet comes and the prophet tells you what's about to happen, you got a choice. It's a choice laid out on the table. That's why they're allowed to see it. Either you can continue to go down the road that is going to lead you to destruction, or you can do something to spare life and limb. A lot of times it's not just written in stone. You can do something to spare yourself. Right? You can do something to spare yourself. Let's say with Nat Turner, had Nat Turner really understood that it was going to be a civil war, and if he wasn't a slave, and if they believed him, they could have just freed the slaves without the massive civil war and saved countless lives. The lady who ran the terror corps, when she told that man that, look, I see in the cards, if you go up in your plane, you're going to die. He could have easily avoided death by not going up in his plane. You see? When that man predicted the assassination of President McKinley, when he told him that, hey, they're going to kill McKinley, they could have did things to avoid him getting killed. When they said that they was going to try to kill Roosevelt, they could have did things to try to keep him from not being killed. When he predicted the Spanish-American War, they could have did things politically to avoid going to war, but they didn't. Which takes us back to look, the Negro prophet. Look what else he says. The Florida hurricane he predicted in a series of sermons throughout the East last spring. So he also predicted a hurricane in Florida. Nobody listened. He kept telling them the same thing. The dude keep warning them about bad stuff that's going to happen. And apparently he's telling them this bad stuff is going to happen in the sense of, look, to help them avoid it. But they wouldn't listen to him, so they kept getting effed off and effed off and effed off. But look what the newspaper said. Now, this is important. In this is this mystic power of prophecy an inheritance from the dusky ancestors of the aged Andrew Jones, or are his predictions merely accidental guesses? Nobody can accidentally guess that many predictions, bro. In view of the fact that he has so often hit the nail on the head, so to speak, his followers take his predictions quite seriously. It may be that he has inculcated in them some of the superstitions of their race, that his powers harks back to the witch doctor period of the dim past. Talking about, even though he's a pastor, even though he's a reverend, that maybe these powers of prophecy date back to these hoodoo workers, right? Which most likely it did. But that takes us back to the original story. Remember, they said New York City, the headline said, New York City to perish in 1931, says Negro prophet of disaster. So he was telling them, look, in 1931, some bad shit is going to happen. New York is going to get effed off. And he predicted major calamities and he predicted a major war. Now, we know that New York wasn't destroyed, but we do know that not too long after this, World War II kicked off with Hitler in Germany and the European powers, Poland and all of that. And Britain got involved. Japan got involved. Russia got involved. Okay. Maybe this prophecy didn't end how he said it, because perhaps after seeing everything else he said, they believed him. And they was like, hey, man, listen, I know we don't want to believe in fortune telling. I know we don't want to believe in prophecy. But this dude has hit the nail on the head so many times. Maybe we should humor him and do something to avoid it. Right? And perhaps they did something to avoid it. And so it didn't happen exactly how we saw it, but destruction did come. Because there are several things that he said that were very intriguing. Like, look at one of the things that he said in this particular prophecy. And remember, World War II kicked off in 1934. He made this prophecy about 1931. He had already predicted World War I. Okay, so look what he says right here. He says he sees victorious Japanese troops marching up Broadway. Let me get it here. Yeah. He sees victorious Japanese troops marching up Broadway. Vision terribly is the destruction of New York, Washington, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and the burning of Chicago once again. Now, we know that during World War II and in 1931, there were not victorious Japanese troops marching up Broadway, but we also know the Japanese did play a key role in World War II with Germany. They was right there with Germany. The Japanese are responsible for Pearl Harbor. So perhaps his prophecy caused the individuals to do something that slightly shifted the timeline. And instead of seeing victorious Japanese troops marching down Broadway, we came out victorious. Because look what else he says. He says he sees America conquered. All the nations of the world will array themselves against Uncle Sam, with the possible exception of Germany. Look, he mentions Germany. Were the terrible words of the Negro prophet. Even Germany will practically be forced to join in war on the United States or be submerged by all of Europe. So he's talking about Germany. He's talking about Europe. He's talking about a world war that's going to see the end of America. He's talking about the Japanese. He's talking about all of the key players. Now, he's saying that this is going to happen in 1931, but he's talking about all of the key players that played in World War II. But how he's describing it, we know that World War II didn't happen like this because perhaps they sent us down a different timeline. Right? Remember at one point, and this is just me rambling, but remember at one point when Hitler was gaining power in Germany, they tried to assassinate him. Now, what if they would have assassinated Hitler when they tried to assassinate Hitler, and then the events of that we know as World War II would have unfolded differently? But see, sometimes when the individual is talking about prophecy and what could happen in the future and future events, and you can avoid prophecy if you do this or if you do that, there's these different timelines. There's these different series of events that can take place. So perhaps they took Prophet Andrew Jones seriously. They did things different. Perhaps he told them what they could do to avoid the peril, and they did it. And so instead of America being destroyed, instead of New York perishing, instead of Japanese troops marching victoriously all down American streets, Germany was defeated in World War II. Japan was defeated in World War II. We got our hands on the nuclear bombs. We dropped the nuclear bombs. Russia beat Germany. They stopped the German forces in Russia, and the Allied forces won. And so what the prophet saw didn't come to pass because finally somebody took him seriously. Just like if they would have took him serious when he predicted the fire, if they would have took him serious when he predicted the Spanish-American War, if they would have took him serious when he predicted the hurricanes in Florida, if they would have took him serious when he predicted the flood in Galveston, if they would have took him serious when he predicted the assassination of McKinley, you get where I'm going with this. Perhaps they said, hey, you know what? Maybe we should take this guy serious. And we were sent down another timeline where this prophecy didn't unfold. Or maybe it was just a failed prophecy. He prophesied that this was going to happen and they didn't take him serious and it just didn't happen. All that's up for grabs. All that's up for grabs. So, as we wrap this up, again, what is fortune telling? Predictive methods of fortune telling include astrology, interpretation of the movements of heavenly bodies as influences on earthly events. We saw that with Nat Turner. Numerology and the utilization of objects such as playing cards. We saw the tarot cards with Ancestor Alice. Tea leaves. Now, we didn't see tea leaves, but remember, Nat Turner said that he saw hieroglyphic figures written on leaves that he found in the woods that gave him more information on the visions and the prophecies that he was seeing. Crystal balls, dice, fire, water. We saw an individual looking into a gourd of water, being able to see into the future. Scattered salt. Fortune telling as a process of character analysis, the study of handwriting, the study of facial characteristics, the study of contours on the skull, and the study of lines on the palm of the hand. We saw an individual reading the palm of an individual hand. So, these methods of fortune telling, we've seen an example of several of these, and we've seen those predictions come true. So this video has been the secrets of fortune telling and prophecy, 5 Negroes who could see the future. We saw Uncle Dinky, we saw Uncle Frank, we saw Aunt Alice, we saw Nat Turner, and we saw Prophet Andrew Jones. I really hope that you guys like this video. I hope some of the stuff that I said was interesting. I hope some of the ad libs I gave you more insight to what our ancestors were enduring during slavery. And I hope it gave you more insight into what fortune telling and prophecy is. Remember, in order to do it, you have to have some type of connection to the spiritual realm. That's what makes it work. And you can either be born with this power, and this power can be honed by the individuals around you, or you can be taught the craft by somebody who already knows it. You can be taught the craft. Okay, you can be taught the craft. And whether you believe it or not, there are countless examples of individuals who claim to be able to peer through the veil of time and space, and their predictions have come true. Now, we know about the prophets in the Bible. We know about people like Nostradamus, etc., etc. But I wanted to show you guys that even while our ancestors were enslaved, we had prophets, oracles, diviners, seers. They had fortune tellers. They had people who could peer through the veil of time and space. And I wanted to show you 5 Negroes from our ancestors back during slavery times who claimed to have that power, and their predictions came true. So I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody for tapping in. We've been here over 2 hours. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, if you haven't already, hit the like button. Please hit the like button. I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. That's one way that you can support the channel, help me build the channel, get more subscribers, get more views, etc., etc. Subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that little bell, that notification bell, so you can be notified when I go live, and you can be notified whenever I drop new content. Man, I love everybody that be watching my videos. Salute, respect. I appreciate you guys. As always, I hope you heard something that you never heard before. I hope you learned something that you didn't previously know. And if I said something that you already heard or that you already knew, I hope I was able to give more context to the topic. This your brother, Matthew Daniels, a.k.a. Pooh, a.k.a. The Chosen Few, a.k.a. The Real Bookworm. I'm not just a bookworm world. I am the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name live on forever, and may your memory, family, your memory never die. Hotel, shalom, ashe, peace, I'm out. Enjoy your day, family.